The House of Representatives has asked the federal government to immediately order a reversal of the recent increase in the price of petrol, which it said has increased the hardship being faced by Nigerians. The House also asked the government to take immediate steps to stabilize petrol and cooking gas prices through targeted interventions such as temporary price relief measures, tax reductions, or subsidies on LPG for low-income households. Adopting a motion of urgent public importance sponsored by 101 members, the House asked the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Ministry of Petroleum Resources and other relevant agencies to expedite the repair and maintenance of domestic refineries and increase local refining capacity as a stopgap to reduce the dependence on imported refined petroleum products.
Concerned that in the recent months, the prices of petrol and cooking gas have skyrocketed and continue to do so, creating an unsustainable financial burden on ordinary Nigerians and escalating the cost of living. Worried that the escalating fuel and gas prices are impacting the cost of transportation, food, essential goods, and health care, further increasing inflation and pushing many families into deeper financial hardship. Resolve to call on the federal government to reverse the recent fuel price hike and take immediate steps to stabilize petrol and cooking gas prices through targeted intervention such as temporary price relief measures, tax reduction, or subsidies on LPG for low-income households.
All right, as analyst, Dr. Sam Amadi joins us now in the studio. Dr. Sam Amadi, good to see you.
Thank you.
Welcome. So what do you make of the House of Reps intervention, calling for an immediate reversal of the recent increase in pump price and going for that to say, look, we need some kind of subsidy? There you go.
Yeah. Well, I think first,
subsidies back.
Yeah, I think first is that the methodology the House uses for very important national and the National Senate for that matter issues probably not the best way. So this kind of motion should have triggered some kind of hearing. So with the motion, the House says, okay, do a hearing, not just real hearing with the stakeholders, policymakers, right. Interrogation, also with citizen groups, with centers of policy and research, like Abuja School and all those places. They discuss it, then they come out. So the policy, this resolution will flow from a rigorous review of government policy. So that's number one. So it now sounds carefully thought out. It would have, addressed, reflected on government ideas, decisions about why this policy is important. It carries more prestige. So I think they should henceforth, this very important policies of resolution should follow from due process, not just parliamentary and vote, but essentially a hearing that is rigorous with all the experts talking. Second, people talk about resolutions are not by themselves law. The National Assembly didn't make a law. But again, resolutions express the authority of representation of the people. And so a government would not necessarily brush it away, ought not to. But in recent history, we've seen governments basically sometimes disregard, wave it away. Of course, disregarding a resolution should trigger reprisal, which within the parliamentary rulemaking toolbox is impeachment proceeding. If in parliament it could be vote of no confidence and all that, censure and all that. But this parliament basically is not capable of any serious sanction of the executive. So what we're going to see is maybe a typical tepid response and maybe not following through. But I think the logic of what they're trying to drive at makes sense, okay? And it's important when we finish the NSG, we heard the World Bank chief saying, continue in the next 50 years. The problem with the World Bank is that it's like a quack doctor. Everybody in the World Bank advised and who followed the advice ended up dying. None of the countries that made it, none, China, Korea, Taiwan, none has followed standard World Bank advisory. In fact, the context in economic theory today about development is about those states that have basically spawned the World Bank, develop a more realistic and sensible policy. I mean, you cannot ask a country to control a policy that is kind of destroying the middle class, impoverishing the middle class itself. We're talking about the very poor, who basically, and then how can you create economic growth? So I think that's a sensible, what the National Assembly is proposing is sensible, but it cuts against the grain of what the World Bank and some of these other voodoo economists, if you like, shock therapy economists, continuing this. They said this 20 years ago to Nigerian leaders. They said it 18 years ago. They're saying 15 years. So after 15 years, with this World Bank advisory, you get back to a worsened, economic, outcome, and then they give you another 15 years.
I'm happy, Dr. Amadi, that you bring in this, because there's no country that the World Bank has advised that is still standing. Isn't it even a big shame that the United States, where it is domiciled, does not take any advice from the so-called World Bank and IMF? Coming back to, because we'll tie this, because it's happening at a time that everyone is talking about Nigeria. They're all here for the NESG, and the CEO of the Morgan Chase, everyone is here, and now the representatives are saying we should revert to the old price. How does this work, even though you say it sounds illogical, as much as it's novel, in an economy that says it has opened up the free market space? So when you say NNPC go back to the old price, is this not counterproductive or indicative of
okay, look at it this way. We're not asking for price control in that typical sense. Okay, the NNPC sits somewhere and takes a calculator and says the price should be X. No. What I think makes sense is to first say, what is driving escalation of price? What interventions can we do to reduce that? That's number one. Number two, the notion that subsidies are bad is deceptive. I mean, it's like what the German economist of, Frederick List many years ago says: you climb the ladder and kick the ladder where you're there. Every country that's developed has looked at what is essential for human development. And by the way, petrol is a productive resource. People think it's consumption. So Amadi drives to the studio. But this is what this medium, small enterprises like for energy. You have a grid that is collapsed or collapsing every day. And so how do you think that unlocking fuel and the prices skyrocketing would help you economically? So I understand the idea that you have to look at the physical crisis that subsidy and smuggling of cost of you, but you have to have a composite balance sheet, bookkeeping. Look at the cost, the losses, look at the social cost. Today, the same World Bank is telling you that in 2024, you're going to have more than 10 million extra poor people. So essentially, you are dealing with poverty, and you're increasing poverty. You are dealing with low productivity. You're also getting some of your factories, small, medium enterprises, posting excess production costs, because about 40% of your cost production is energy, either from the grid, from self-provision, and the grid is weak. So I think that there should be a much more rigorous assessment of economic policy. And always about contextual. There's no textbook notion that subsidy is good or bad. It's contextual. Subsidy that
peculiarities
exactly,
of the
subsidy that Germany, UK, Europe, they are giving subsidy to electricity. In fact, subsidy is a tool of industrial policy. For example, you could want to subsidize production of something and make it cheaper, whether through tax discount, tax waivers. Those are forms of subsidy. So I think that it's now time for the executive branch to sit back, perhaps with some expert of National Assembly, and say, okay, let's get a real cost analysis of this policy in terms of what are we suffering. If you look at GDP growth, I believe that you're going to see we could have grown more if we had more supply of energy, electricity, and fuel. So it's good to say we have saved, I heard that we have saved consumption because probably we controlled the price relativity, makes smuggling less incentivized. That's correct. But again, if you are consuming lower than you should consume, it's a problem to production.
That in itself is
exactly. So the whole notion, I think they want to stay afloat. The World Bank
and the reality, from all indications, based on what you've said and what the House of Reps intervention is saying is that, look, subsidy is a reality that we cannot
Is
run
to see
away from.
how much can
But
we
you need,
and how.
You know, to
Yeah.
focus on strategic
and again,
areas.
look at the big problem. You see,
Right,
the
very
World Bank
quickly.
bottom line is fiscal stability. Okay, the IMF World Bank. They don't look at. They're not seeing us as going to be productive. They're not seeing massive economic growth. They're not saying stay afloat. Don't lose fiscal fundamentals. So you stay. So in the next 15 years, Nigeria will still be in what you call low-income trap, middle income, or even low-income trap. We're not going to move ahead because these policies cannot move you ahead. These are policies that basically is like a poor person.
So it's safe to say, stay away from World Bank.
You're a poor man and you're
IMF
owing.
recommendations.
You don't owe
We'll have to leave it there.
Okay, don't owe more 3 million, but don't be great, don't be rich. Just stay debtor to 2 million. That's what it's all about.
Dr. Sam Amadi,
Yeah.
we'll have to say thank you very much for joining us.